Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from the fifth group. We will present you the theory of representation by Stuart Hall. Please listen carefully and enjoy. Here we have the definition of representation. So what is representation? According to Stuart Hall, he defines the representation as a process of producing meaning using language. In another sense, representation defines the concepts that exist in our minds by using language. Language in this case is defined more broadly, namely as any system that uses signs that can be verbal or non-verbal. So it can be written, spoken, or pictorial symbols and signs. That is, someone who can express thoughts, concepts, and ideas about something. In short, once again, representation is the production of meaning through language. So it refers to the process by which reality is conveyed in communication, either via words, sounds, image, signs, symbols, or a combination thereof.
Now, representation is the most important part of the process by which meaning are produced and exchanged between groups in a culture. Representation in the scope of culture refers to the interpretation of various habits of people life which are explored as proof of the meaning itself. So in this concept, every society that has a culture will get a meaning about its own representation. That's all for me. Thank you.
Next, how does the concept of representation connect meaning and language to culture? There is the system by which all sorts of objects, people, and events are correlated with a set of concepts or mental representations, which we carry around in our heads. Without them, we could not interpret the world meaningfully at all. In the first place, then, meaning depends on the system of concepts and image formed in our thought which can stand for or represent the world, enabling us to refer to things both inside and outside our heads. However, a shared conceptual map is not enough. We must also be able to represent or exchange meanings and concepts, and we can only do that when we also have access to a shared language. Language is therefore the second system of representation involved in the overall process of constructing meaning. Our shared conceptual map must be translated into a common language so that we can correlate our concepts and ideas with certain written words, spoken sounds, or visual image. The general terms we use for words, sounds, or image which carry meaning is sight. The sign stand for or represent the concepts and the conceptual relation between them which we carry around in our heads, and together they make up the meaning system of our culture. Next, at the heart of the meaning process in culture, then are two related systems of representation. The first enables us to give meaning to the world by constructing a set of correspondence or a chain of equivalence between things, people, objects, events, abstract ideas, and other, and our system of concepts, our conceptual maps. The second depends on constructing a set of correspondence between our conceptual map and a set of signs, arranged or organized into various languages which stand for or represent those concepts. The relation between things, concept, and signs lies at the heart of the production of meaning in language. The process which links these three elements together is what we call representation. According to Stuart, there are three types of approaches to representation. The first approach is reflective approach. Reflective approach explains that language functions as a mirror, which reflects the true meaning of everything in the world. In a reflective approach, meaning depends on an object, person, idea, or event in the real world, and language functions like a mirror to reflect the true meaning as it already exists in the world. Essentially, the reflective theory proposes that language works by simply reflecting or imitating a fixed truth that is already present in the real world. For example, rose means rose. There is no other meaning.
Intentional approach. In intentional approach, we use language to communicate something in accordance with the way we perceive something. The second approach to meaning in representation argues the opposite case. This approach says that the speaker, writer, or anyone else can express his unique meaning to the world through language. Again, there are several points to this argument since all of us, as individuals especially, also use language to communicate things that are special or unique to us by our way of seeing the world.
Constructionist approach is meaning constructed in and through language. We believe that we construct meaning through the language we use. This is the third approach to recognize the public, the social character of language. It acknowledges that neither things in themselves nor the individual users can fix meaning in language. Things don't mean we construct meaning using a representational system that is concept and sign. Of course, sign may also have a material dimension. Representational system consists of the actual sound we make with our vocal cords. Representation is a practice or a kind of work which uses material objects and effects. But the meaning depends not on the material quality of the sign, but on its symbolic function. It is because a particular sound of the words stands for or symbolizes or represents a concept that in language it can function as a sign and convey meaning, or as the constructionists say, signify. Example. The simplest example of this point, which is critical for an understanding of how languages function as a representational system, is the famous traffic lights example. A traffic light is a machine which produces different colored lights in a sequence. The effect of the light of different wavelengths on the eye, which is natural and material phenomenon, produces the sensation of different colors. Now, these things certainly do exist in the material world. But it is our culture which breaks the spectrum of the light into different colors, distinguishes them from one another, and attaches names red, green, yellow to them. We use a way of classifying the color spectrum to create colors which are different from one another. We represent or symbolize the different colors and classifying them according to different colors concept. This is the conceptual color system of our culture. We say our culture because, of course, other cultures may define the color spectrum differently. What's more, they certainly use different actual words or letters to identify different colors. That what we call red, the French call rouge, and so on and so forth. This is the linguistic code, the one which correlates certain words or signs with certain colors or concepts, and thus enable us to communicate about colors to other people using the language of colors. But how do we use this representational or symbolic system to regulate the traffic? Colors do not have any true or fixed meaning in that sense. Red does not mean stop in nature any more than green means go. In other settings, red may stand for or symbolize or represent blood or danger or communism, and green may represent Ireland or the countryside or environmentalism. Even these meanings can change. In the language of electric plugs, reduced to mean the connection with the positive charge, but this was arbitrarily and without explanation changed to burn. But then for many years the producers of the plugs had to attach a slip of paper telling people that the code or convention had changed. Otherwise, how would they know? Red and green work in the language of traffic lights because stop and go are the meaning which have been assigned to them in our culture by the code or convention governing this language. And this code is widely known and almost universally obeyed in our culture and cultures like ours. Though we can well imagine other cultures which do not possess the code, in which this language would be completely mystery. Therefore, representation is the production of meaning through language. In representation, constructionists argue we use signs organized into languages of different kinds to communicate meaningfully with others. Languages can use signs to symbolize or stand for or reference objects, people, and events in the so-called real world. But they can also reference imaginary things and fantasy worlds or abstract ideas which are not in any obvious sense part of our material world.
Conclusion. The first, representation is a process of producing meaning using a language. The second, this concept of representation will be useful for exploring what a representation is and what the activities we think represent. Representative and spiritedly explaining what it means for one thing or activity to be representative over another. The third, theories of representation for constructionists is basically about seeing beyond what it means or reflected in the representation of an image, object, or symbol or sound.
So meaning is constructed in and through language. Is the third approach to recognize the public, the social character of language. A sign may also have a material dimension, but its meaning does not depend on the material quality of the sign, but on its symbolic function.
Okay, that's all from us. Please feel free to give your comments, or if there's something doesn't fit in your mind, you can drop your question at the WhatsApp group. Thank you for your attention, and we are sorry for any errors. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.